In this movie, we're going to look at adjusting basic transforms, scale, rotation, position, and all that kind of stuff. And on the surface, that sounds really simple, but in Element, it's kind of not. So let's go ahead and we'll apply Element to this element layer. And you can see that I've applied a background here that's currently hidden. Go ahead and click Scene Setup and go to the Starter Pack in the Model Browser area and scroll down a little bit and add each of these rocks. Rock 1, click on Rock 2, and click on Rock 3. Now we want to make sure that these rocks are not on the same group because we want to adjust them independently. So I want Rock 1 on Group 1, and that's great. I want Rock 2 on Group 2, so we need to enable it for Group 2 and disable it for Group 1. We want Rock 3 on Group 3, so we'll enable it on Group 3 and disable it from Group 1. So now Rock 1 is on Group 1, Rock 2 is on Group 2, and Rock 3 is on Group 3. Once that's all set up, go ahead and click OK. Now it seems like we only have one rock because they're all at the same spot. But remember, Group 1 is going to control Rock 1, Group 2 is going to control Rock 2, and same thing with Group 3. Now, in each of these groups, you'll notice three different categories. We have Particle Replicator, Particle Look, and then also this thing called Copy-Paste Group. Copy-Paste Group we really don't need to worry about for right now. We'll talk about this in a later movie. This is really just a utility. But to control particle settings, we use Particle Look and Particle Replicator. Later, we'll talk about the Particle Replicator, which allows you to create almost like a little particle system with 3D objects. And so the Particle Replicator contains the properties to control the entire replicator. But this is where it also kind of gets confusing because if you want to adjust position, we don't do that in the Particle Look section. We do that in the Particle Replicator section. So I'm going to go to Group 1, and I'm going to change position XY of this rock. I'm going to move it over, and I'll move it back using position Z. There we go. And over a little bit more maybe. Now if you want to adjust the size of the rock, we can't do that in the Particle Replicator section. We have to go down to the Particle Look section for that. So I could take this down a little bit or make it bigger if I wanted to there. I'm going to close up Particle Look and Particle Replicator and actually all of Group 1. We'll do the same thing for, actually we'll leave Group 2 in the middle, and then we'll take Group 3, we'll move that rock over to the right. You'll notice there's an effect control point here, and so we could move that over if we wanted to use that. But the position Z, if I move that back a little bit, will affect that. So now it's kind of off a little bit from the effect control point. It's kind of offset a little bit. And I might choose to move that back even further here. There we go. So those are the basic transforms. Another thing I just wanted to point out really quick, this doesn't really have too much to do with the tutorial, but lighting really makes a huge difference. I mean, these rocks are great. The texture and obviously the 3D surface of these rocks, it's just really high quality and amazing. But once we add a light here, which I added a little green key light, kind of a backlight a little bit on some of these rocks to kind of go in with the background a little bit. Looks really great. And then I also added another light that's kind of like a pinkish fill ambient light thing going on here from the top to kind of blend in and become kind of like a contrast with the key green light. And when you put these together, it really makes a big difference in the realism of our scene. So again, here are the rocks before, and here are the rocks after. And of course, we have this camera in our scene. We could select it, unlock it, select the unified camera tool, and move around here, which is really cool as well. So those are the basic transforms. And again, it gets a little bit confusing, especially when you get into something like rotation, because in the Particle Replicator section, rotation controls the entire group, which again, we'll talk about later. But then in the Particle Look section, there's also rotation, which controls the rotation of the individual object. Now, this becomes especially confusing when you start dealing with animation, because these properties are not really named. For example, this property right here is just called X. So if I set a keyframe for X here and X here, and I come back down to my layer and I press the letter U to reveal the keyframes, I just see those two properties. It just says X and X. I have no idea what these are referring to. So it does become a little bit of a challenge, more than it might be in other third-party effects. If you're just tweaking settings and you're not animating anything, no big deal. But again, if you add animation or expressions to the mix, you got to be really careful to take note of what you're doing here.